been a pleasure speaking to you practically every year for the last several years because, during this time of the holidays, you've always had these great, funny shows that had to do with um, great fairy tales, but always giving it that sort of Toronto Canadian connection with whatever was going on with the world. And am I correct to say that when I saw the title of this, it's true? This is the final. This is it. We're done.
It's the end of the road, Rudy. Yeah, after 25 years, actually 27 years.
Wow.
It's our 25th live show at the Elgin Theater that we've celebrated or are celebrating because we had 2 years of virtual shows during COVID. And but I needed to get to the 25th live show before we all, wander off into the sunset.
Why was this the right time? You kind of explained it already there, but for you personally, after doing this for so long, why was this the right time?
Well, I'm 93 years old, Rudy, and I figured it might know. Actually, I'm not quite 93, but I am
No.
76. So, and the fact of the matter is, my wife, Karen Kane from the National Ballet, has also retired from the ballet after 50 years being the premier ballerina there and then the artistic director of the company. I just felt that it was time for both of us to kind of say, we've had a good long run, and let's just see what we can do together to kind of have a great time for the rest of our lives.
Did you ever think when you first put this all together that it would be so iconic over the years?
Well, that's a good question. No, certainly not iconic. Because I was a guy who was always an actor in my entire life, whether it was here or in France or in England or in New York, where I lived for 8 years. Um, but when I met Karen and we were married in 1983, it seemed that I didn't want to solely be a performer anymore at that point, and always at the mercy of producers, casting directors, whomever, because it's such a fickle business to be a performer. And I thought, oh, well, why don't I try something that will give me some security and responsibility and overview? And why don't I start producing these shows where we had originally been hired, Karen and I, right after we were married, by the British producer of these shows. And I just fell in love with the kind of audience participation that the English pantomime offered. And I said to Paul Elliott, who was that producer who introduced them to Canada, I said, you know what? After 3 years of being on stage with you, I also want to be your co-producer. And that's how it came to be that I started to do these shows as a performer and producer. And when we moved into the Elgin Theater in 1996, I became the sole producer of them. Little did I know that they would last beyond, maybe 2 or 3 years. And here we are 25 years later. So no, I had no idea at the beginning how long they would become such a popular entertainment here in Ontario.
There's a specific name for this type of performance, correct?
Well, it's an English pantomime. And of
Yes.
course, for everybody to understand that it's not Marcel Marceau. It's the extreme opposite of Marcel Marceau, because as you know, it's loud, it's raucous, it's a musical comedy with all sorts of pop tunes, and audience participation is the one thing that really sets it apart from any other kind of live theater. And the children and the adults boo the bad guy and cheer the hero, and the ad libs that go back and forth between the audience and the actors is pretty unique as a form of entertainment. So I've always said that the most thing I'm proud of in doing these shows, really, is the introduction of live theater to children, because it's the most unique way for them to see, wow, there's something here beyond just being on my instrument, but being on my phone, being on my laptop, being on whatever thing that they use these days. So I think we reinvigorate them into the element of live theater and make them the audiences of the future.
You cherished being the villain. What was that like for you?
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, it's always great to get horrific booing episodes when you make your first appearance. And, even though I retired from being on stage in 2015, the
Mhm.
last time we did Peter Pan, I just needed to spend more time producing the shows. And when I realized that this was going to be our final year ever of doing the shows, I thought, I got to come back on stage one last time to hear those boos because they invigorated me one more time.
It's almost like the only time you ever really get the boo is at wrestling or at your shows.
Right.
Um, what's been the most fun for you doing this over the years? Because you've had so many different types of shows, and you've had, sometimes special guests who have been part of it,
Mhm.
from wrestling, from Canadian Idol. You've had so many uh different people who've moved on to do so many great things too.
Yeah, well, I mean, you talk about wrestling, of course. We had Bret the Hitman Hart as the genie in Aladdin back in 2004. And then we toured the entire country. We were in 7 cities
Wow.
with Aladdin in 2006 through a Live Nation deal that I did. Karen Kane, my wife, was in several of these shows to begin with. Mr. Dress Up, Ernie Coombs, did 3 of my shows at the Elgin Theater. Uh, one of the Peter Pans that we did, and we've done 4 of them over the years, Kurt Browning was Peter Pan. So, we've had a wonderful array of Canadian stars in these shows over the years, but we've also established a real coterie of our own stars that have just become such audience favorites, such as Dan Shamroy as Plum Bum. Plum Bum is such a unique character, as you know, in this production of Peter's Final Flight. Eddie Glenn, my favorite redhead, has been with me in 20 of our shows.
Wow.
These are audience favorites, and I'll miss these people and these performers and the talent that they bring to the shows.
You said the word talent, which really does emphasize your shows. And the reason why is I don't think people realize how quickly the actors adapt to situations, whether somebody is yelling out something
Mm.
or when the news changes in the stories that you guys have adapted to originally. And then in a flick, it has to change to adapt to what is going on, what we see out our windows. What is that like to be able to do that? Because that really shows the strength of not just the shows, but the actors as well.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be really fast on your feet, that's for sure. And that's what the audience loves, the fact that we can integrate things that happen that particular day or the night before into the show the next night. One of my jokes last night as Captain Hook was, um, thank you for, I'm feeling really good today because Elon Musk let me back on Twitter. Uh, and what else is going on? Oh, and I of course say, oh, come on, are those the best booze you can give me? I've heard better booze for the Canadian national soccer team. So I mean, all these things come into play, and we relish those moments when we can integrate something that happened instantaneously before.
Does I know there's so many, and you're giving me some great lines, but do you remember anything in particular that somebody may have yelled out and you were so quick on your feet to throw it back at them and just shut them down? That laugh just says it all.
Well, there have been many times I don't remember. I mean, one of the things that comes to mind is somebody yelling something at Captain Hook, saying, "Hey, who the hell? What's going on?" Hey? And I say, of course, "I'm sorry, sir, I don't speak loser." Uh, I mean
How
that's
did you not get into professional wrestling like as a manager or something? Because Bobby the Brain Heenan, rest his soul, would have loved you and how you just do these great comebacks.
I don't know, but let's talk about wrestling again because when I first met Bret Hart, and he was thinking about whether he would join us or not as the genie in Aladdin, I remember meeting him at the Royal York Hotel here in Toronto, and Bret said to me, you know, for the majority of my career in wrestling, I was just a commodity. I was a piece of meat. And he said, you know, if you're thinking of using me in a show that is primarily for children and families and giving them a real treat at the holidays, he said, I am in 100%. So,
Wow.
I mean, that's the kind of guy Bret Hart was, and that's what makes these shows so important, I think.
It does. And again, it brings families together. Yours is the only show that literally children and adults are together. But here's the weird part about it: children get the children jokes, parents may not get it, but parents get the adult jokes and the kids don't get it. And somehow it's the perfect balance that everybody can come together and watch and get a good laugh.
Well, ironically, we sell many more adult tickets to these shows than kids tickets, because the adults know that there are so many things that go right over their kids' heads. And I mean, I love that. You know, the kids love the color and the costumes and the sets and the LED screen at the back of the stage, and of course the adults get the jokes that may be just on the edge of being maybe not quite right for the kids. A little bit
Just at
there.
the edge.
Yeah.
Well, what is this final show about? What's it actually called, and what is it about?
Well, we're calling it Peter's Final Flight, to give an indicator, of course, that this is the end of the road to Neverland. We're all going off to Neverland and we'll never return. And you know, if you want to know what it's about, I'm not going to tell you the story, because you know, even though we use same titles over many years, we always write a brand new script. We have great writers. Matt Murray is the writer of this year's show and has been for 6 years. And we never want to give the audience the same thing. You know, it's not like the Nutcracker. You go to the Nutcracker year in, year out. It's the same ballet. It's the same choreography. With our shows, we have always something different on offer. So, but you know something, Rudy? Here's the thing that I think some of your audience will be interested to know. I have actually written a book about the 25-year history of our shows. And it's filled with hundreds of photos, not just from the time we've been at the Elgin Theater from 1996, but earlier than that, from 1984 onwards, when we were at the Royal Alexandra Theater.
Wow.
So it's like a treasure trove of theater history with our shows. Hundreds of photos, my comments about every one of the shows, and my memories of people who were in the shows, the stars. And I think it's a really lovely reminder of what we've done with these shows over all these many years. It's available,
Amazing.
by the way, at rosspetty.com, my website, and also at the Elgin Theater.
Same place we can get tickets for the show?
rosspetty.com. You got it.
So as we wrap this up, sir, I'm going to ask both characters. I'm going to first ask Captain Hook, and how does he feel that the road is finally ending, and where looks like that road to Neverland is going to end? And then I'm going to ask you, sir, and how you want that your legacy to be remembered. First, of course, Captain Hook.
Hey, Captain, come on out here. He's asking you a question. Yeah, here I am. Hey, Rudy, how you doing, man?
I'm good.
Uh, so,
I
so,
really
so here's what Captain Hook would say. I mean, because you know, we actually brought him back from the underworld because the croc ate him from the last time we saw him. So in our show, he's coming back as a vision, and he's coming back actually to meet up with his ex-wife. Okay, I'm telling you a little bit of a storyline here. We meet Helga Hook, and he wants Helga to come back to the underworld with him. So that's where his destiny lies, back in the underworld. From my perspective, personally, it's a very emotional time for me. It's bittersweet. It's been such a large part of my life to work with so many wonderful performers, to be in that beautiful venue of the Elgin Theater, and for it to come to an end. Well, I'm having a difficult time getting through every show. And even though we play until January the 7th, I mean, the emotions are already rising up in me all the time. So it's going to be really tough once we get towards the end of the run in that first week of January.
I hope you're ready for those standing ovations, my friend, because it's going to be well
Uh,
deserved.
well, thank you. Really appreciate that.
I say thank you, and I appreciate the fact that you've always made time to speak with me, whether I was at a big radio station or is on my own. I will always
Mm,
appreciate that. I've seen many of the shows, and it is really true that it's like, even though you've gone to one show, you go to the next one, it's going to be different from what you just saw a day or two ago.
right.
But it has been a big part of my life, a big part of a lot of people in Toronto's lives. It's going to be missed, but to have those memories and to know that we were part of it, we all together say, thank you, sir, for creating such a great holiday extravaganza for us.
Rudy, I appreciate that. It's been a real treat for me. It's been a real pleasure to have been able to give these kinds of shows to Ontario. And you know what? We've given the shows to the entire country too, because we've had 6 of them shot as television specials over the years. So,
Right.
yeah, it's been a great ride. Thank you for your time.